Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Curseof and welcome back to another video. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by none other than Justice from Team JDG, the other half who doesn't come on the channel as much, but he's here today to bring you guys a top 8 deck profile. Welcome to the channel, Justice.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It's nice to have you. Nice to have the other half of Team JDG over on the curseof Yugioh channel.
Absolutely.
So Justice, in the most recent winner box, you actually managed to get top 8.
I did. It was a fun one.
It was a fun one. And you brought a deck that didn't have any results prior to, nor a lot of discussion. Do you want to kind of explain the theory and...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there was a little bit of conversation coming in the SDL Discord when GX box was kind of first spoiled. We saw Raging Flame Sprite, and then we saw the skills, and people were like, "Oh, that's cute with room for growth." You know, like, becomes 1,000 direct attack right away. I'm like, I wonder if there's something there. And at first it was just kind of a meme-y, this could be fun for 1 or 2 duels, that thing we usually do.
Yeah.
And it kind of was. And as I started refining the list more, though, I started winning more, and I'm like, wait, this might not actually be a total meme. But the deck actually didn't fully come together until Terramaster suggested the Amethyst Cats. Because it was originally just focused on Flame Sprite, and was like using UFO Turtle to, search it out. But the thing is that Cat actually is basically just copies 4, 5, and 6 of Raging Flame Sprite.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously it showed some pretty solid results considering you did actually manage to top the most recent Speedily Winnabox. Your record was what? It was
5 and 2 in
5 and 2 in Swiss. Gotcha. And just before we actually jump into the card by card here, I know you said you don't have a complete memory of all your matchups in order, but what were some general decks that you faced and how you found the matchups for this deck?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give both of those because I do remember what I lost to. I'll go the losses first, then we'll go into the rest of the matchups. Okay. The first loss in Swiss was to the Millennium Crush, the Millennium Eye Mind Crush build. And he opened Mind Crush literally all 3 games of the match. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
It definitely made things harder. Like I won one of the games that he opened Mind Crush, but the other 2 it was just kind of backbreaking. Knowing exactly what's in your opponent's hand, like especially with a deck like this where it's very back row heavy, so you know exactly what to play around, and you can just choose to get rid of any one card you want from the hand. Like that's it hurts.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Okay. And what was your other loss then in Swiss?
The other loss was, I'll be real, I don't remember the exact deck because I don't remember it being like a very specific archetype. I think it was just like almost like beat down with tribute and stuff. The problem, and this is where the decks, as the build that I talked with, the big weakness. He also sided into Jinzo.
Yes.
And if the opponent drops Jinzo early, this deck just folds and says, okay, go next.
Makes sense.
Because, as you can see, there's 7 monsters, 13 traps.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jinzo's a problem.
Yeah, so speaking of the card count here, let's go ahead and jump into the card by card, and let's start off with the skill card, because there's no better place to start in a Speed Duel deck list.
That's right. Yeah, so Room for Growth is awesome. It's little Cyrus there, but yeah, it's really cool. I think it's very flavorful because it's like Cyrus getting showing his potential. Yes. But yeah, it just takes your level 3 or lower monster and makes them big, and it's great. It gives them 900 attack, which is awesome for the turn.
Yeah, exactly. And you have 2 level 3s here, that being your 3 copies of Raging Flame Sprite and 3 copies of Amethyst Cat.
Yeah, so basically the theory is each of those represents at least 1,000 damage, right? Because Flame Sprite goes to exactly 1,000 with the skill, and Cat, as I said, goes to 2,100, which is 1,050 if it's attacking directly from its own effect.
Yep.
So 6 monsters that basically I summon them, and they're going to deal 1,000 or more if you don't deal with them.
Yep, makes sense, makes sense. And then the very last monster here in the deck is the one copy of Lava Golem, your Jinzo answer, apparently, the only one.
Yeah, and we can get more into that as we talk, 'cause I know, you know, we kind of want to get into like, all right, what would you change after the fact? I keep the one Lava Golem in the main. There's a second one on the side, which is, again, designed to be partially a Jinzo Anther. I will tell you it isn't. And the reason that it isn't is because by the time the Jinzo player has 2 monsters on their field, I'm probably dead.
Very fair, very fair.
But it's still good. Like, I would definitely still run the one in the main. It's an answer to just a lot of things. It really actually helps in like a burn matchup. It helps in a lot of different things, especially in a deck like this where like I'm floodgating things, I'm wheeling things, I'm using wall disruption to weaken them. So it's like their board can often just get clogged. So then I pretty much always have like Drippy Fodder for the Lava Golem. So it's either to remove problems or just to be that extra additional source of burn damage.
Yeah, for sure. I think Lava Golem's a necessity in any deck that kind of goes towards that sort of lockdown burn-ish strategy. Very, very strong. And yeah, a few cards you just mentioned here. Triple copies of Floodgate Trap Hole, triple copies of Wall of D, and then 3 copies of a card you don't see very often being Waboku.
So I'll hit on the obvious ones first, and then we'll get to Waboku.
Sounds
so again, this deck is very much it's almost like a control deck. I know there's been like some discussion. Obviously, I've been kind of outspoken on not just straight calling it a burn deck, not because it doesn't burn at all, but simply because when you say burn deck, this is not what people think of when they think of, okay, what's a burn deck in Speed Duels, right? You're thinking of generally either, you know, warrior burn or just, you know, regular burn digging for gold, looking to the future. Like you're thinking of Amazon Swordswoman and these things. Like this deck functions very differently. It's a much more proactive game plan. Than your average burn deck, because like my win condition is by attacking with my monsters. Like that is my win.
Yeah, you actually put monsters out there instead of relying on your opponent to do something.
Right, exactly. So basically, the trap lineup is the floodgates, the wall of these are essentially they're control tools, is what they are. And those are, I think, pretty standard. Not every deck is going to run 3 wall of D, but in this deck, like it made sense. Although I think I've down to 2 since then. But the Wabokus are actually amazing. Okay. Like, that card is so good in this deck, and it's specifically for the reason of what we just talked about, in that it is monster focused. You know, whereas a traditional burn deck, it's like, all right, they attack monster swordswoman, you get rid of it, cool, no problem. It did what it was supposed to do. Like, this deck's win condition is based on its monsters, so above all else, I have to keep my monsters on the field so that they can attack you again directly next turn.
Makes sense.
And the Waboku is absolutely fantastic for that, because it basically is almost a guaranteed my monster is going to live this turn.
Yeah, which then I guess in turn would guarantee an extra 1,000 damage or more, I guess, if it's Flame Sprite on the following turn.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And then you have two ofs in the trap card lineup here, which kind of goes towards the not so much a burn deck idea. 2 copies of Zoma and 2 copies of Wheel.
Yeah, I mean, show me any burn deck that's running 2 Zomas. And, like, honestly, have you thought about cutting down to less? So the Nightmare Wheel, I originally was running 3, but for deck space reasons, it went to 2. And the reason why that's what went to 2 is I was anticipating a larger Cyber Angel presence than there actually ended up being.
Okay.
In the tournament, I only played against it once. And it's just Nightmare Wheel's really bad against Izana.
Gotcha.
Because you activate it and she just pops it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it's at 2. Zoma is actually a really weird card in this deck. Like, there's times where, you know, it just does Zoma things and wins the game. But then there's other times where it's actually completely useless, because I'm locking my opponent's field down with, like, Floodgates and Wall of D. The Zoma actually just has nothing to do some of the time.
That's very fair, yeah.
So, like, it's actually a really weird card. Sometimes you love to see it, and other times it's practically a dead draw, which is really weird to say for, like, literally the best card in the format, but...
Yeah, generally, not something you'd say when referring to a Speed Duel deck.
Right. So yeah, Zoma's just in a really weird place in this deck. I think I still have it at 2 right now, just because of those times where it can just flat out win a game, but yeah, it's in a really bizarre place in this deck specifically.
Okay, cool. And then moving off into your side deck here, and before I even jump into it there, how confident are you in your sideboard?
No.
Okay.
That's actually probably the part of the deck that I've changed the most since the event. There are some cards in there that I think are actually still very good. But yeah, it's changed a bit. I'll go over my thinking like at the time, and then I'll kind of, I guess, get into where I'm at now with it.
Yep, sounds good. All right, so let's start off just through the monsters here, starting off with the second copy of Lava Golem.
Yeah, so Lava Golem and Yudoria were both designed to be Jinzo answers. I've already kind of talked about why Lava Golem failed in that respect.
Yes.
Yudoria is actually very good, and I've actually since bumped up to 2 copies. And people would wonder, wait, Yudoria, we have DD Warrior Lady. What year are you living in? But the thing is, because it has to be specifically a Jinzo answer, Yudoria is actually better, because DD Warrior Lady can only get rid of the monster that it itself battles with, and there's so many ways for the Jinzo player to prevent DD Warrior Lady from battling with Jinzo specifically.
Very true.
And that's really the big issue with DD Warrior Lady, when it has to answer one specific monster, because again, this deck's obvious worst matchup is Spellproof, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the Jinzo summon turbo deck. So like, if I'm just setting DD Warrior Lady and they just go, all right, if they have 2 monsters on the field, they never have to attack into DD. Or like, if I try to proactively attack DD into Jinzo, and they just book her on attack, like, that Jinzo's never leaving the field, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Yudoria, they don't have that option for. So yeah, I've actually since bumped it up to 2 Yudoria. DD Warrior Lady is great, it's just Yudoria is better at very specifically getting rid of Jinzo, which this deck absolutely has to be able to do.
Okay. Moving off into the next one here, which I thought was very interesting, but kind of makes sense in theory with your deck, Swarm of Locusts.
Yeah, so both of the next 2 cards, Swarm and Golden Ladybug, were anti-burn cards.
Yes.
Again, anticipating a fairly large burn presence, which I think I played against burn twice in Swiss, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Golden Ladybug was actually great.
Okay.
It actually put in a lot of work, and Locusts, like, I sided in both times against burn. I think I just didn't see it both times, or like by the time I saw it, it didn't matter. So it's kind of hard to say, just because it was always at the bottom of the deck. But like, the idea is that it's a slower matchup, so I have time to just sit there and flip Swarm of Locusts, and worst thing they can do to it, right, is Nightmare Wheel it. But then if they're wheeling that, then my actual damage can go through with my cats.
Very fair. Yeah, and you have a lot of lockdown too, so the odds of your opponent actually being able to out the Locusts isn't as high as it normally would be.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's just very much an anti-burn card. I think in this particular deck that I can protect it, and specifically for that matchup, I think it actually made a lot of sense. Again, shout out to Terramaster for that particular suggestion. But it made a lot of sense, and if I had ever drawn it, I might be able to give you a better idea of actually how good it was. But like, so I can really only talk in theory because it was only at the bottom of the deck. But it seems like it should be useful.
Okay, fair enough. Well, yeah, I agree. In theory, it seems awesome. And then the last 2 here we have is the 1 copy of Nightmare Wheel and the 1 Waking.
Yeah, so Waking, I think, is almost self-explanatory. I'm an extremely back row heavy deck, so you side in Waking when they're siding in more of their, back row hate, because I think in this event, like, a lot of people were on straight flush.
Yeah.
I know I got straight flushed a few times in this event, and so they think it's just going to blow you out, and instead,
summon
the dragon has been awoken.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I know some people are like, oh, Blue Eyes Ultimate isn't a thing anymore because we have Cyber End. I will tell you, I only played Cyber Angels once during Swiss, but the one time that I did, the fact that I had Blue Eyes Ultimate was important.
Really? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, because generally speaking, their biggest play is double Edaton Boost Izana,
Yeah.
which brings it to 45,
Yeah.
which means it can just beat over Cyber End for free. But it actually trades with Blue Eyes Ultimate. I mean, worst case, Burning Machine into a Ritual, but then if they've done that, then I'm in a much better spot, and I can actually deal with things.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so just that extra 500 type points actually came into play, which was kind of funny.
Interesting.
Thousand Eyes Restrict is almost... I don't think I summoned that monster, or maybe I did once off of Waking, but like, it's actually almost bad because my deck needs to attack in order to win.
Makes sense.
and I don't have like a way of tributing it off or anything, like it is actually almost like bad.
So you triggered Waking multiple times during this tournament.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Which was very cool. There was I know I brought out Joker. Well, I actually did not summon Cyber End at all, just because there was no need. No, sorry, I think one duel I did. But yeah, I brought out Joker once, brought out Bloy's Ultimate once, Cyber End once, and Ojama King once actually.
Wow.
Although it like immediately got booked, so it was kind of whatever, but it was funny. But yeah, so yeah, no, Waking is great. Like back row heavy removal or back row heavy deck, like Waking is always a good side.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, and the third Nightmare Wheel is just like obviously it's a great card, and it got sided in. I'm gonna say most of the time. When it wasn't the Cyber Angel match, I think most of the time it got sided in.
That makes sense.
I really just from like community discussion and how popular the deck seemed like it was gonna be. We were definitely anticipating more people playing it than actually did.
Yeah,
so.
It seems a lot of people were just too scared of the sideboard Mind Crush for the deck and just kind of strayed away from it.
Yeah, which like is a valid concern because I think most people are siding Mind Crush, like
Yes.
were in that event and probably still are now. So I think it's actually a very legitimate concern.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I mean that covers the card by card. I think the extra deck is pretty self-explanatory. These are good extra deck monsters. I'm still iffy on the Ultimate Dragon, but it came up for Justice, so maybe. But yeah, now we have the real question for you. Obviously, this is the deck that got top 8 at the Winnabox, but what would you change? Because I know there's things you change.
Yeah, the main deck mostly stays the same. The only things are, and this is still very much in testing phase right now, we dropped a single Wall of Disruption, actually dropped the Zomas for the time being, just as a testing thing. Just to say, just because there's a not insignificant number of times where that card is really awkward to try to play. Added in a couple Book of Moons in the main. They don't do anything against Spellproof Jinzo, but any other deck running Jinzo, it's an answer. It's also good because it's technically a Floodgate answer. If they try to like Floodgate my one normal summon, being able to book it so that I get to keep it and can use it next turn matters.
Yep, fair enough.
And up to the Nightmare Wheel to 3. Just again, if Cyber Angels are not going to be a very popular deck, then it's better to have the 3 wheels instead of 2.
Yeah, 100%.
Other than that, yeah, the deck's looking the same. The main deck overall was very, very consistent and felt really, really good. And then, yeah, I said side deck, two new Dorias instead of one, no second Lava Golem. Ladybug is good. Took out Scarabs for now, just kind of sided the third book and third wall, just kind of in case.
Okay.
But again, that's more of an in-testing phase kind of thing. Whether that would be, like, finalized or not. Hard to say. Also, I don't know exactly when this video is going to go live, so I don't want to, potentially spoil any Winning Box things. But,
no, fair.
but that's about what we're looking at right now. So the main deck, mostly the same. Just get a couple books in there to deal with non-spellproof Jinzos. And then, yeah, this deck, like, so I guess, and hopefully I'm not jumping the gun here, but kind of to get into matchup spread.
Yeah, go.
Both in pre-tournament testing and during the tournament itself, it actually seems to have really good matchups against almost the entire meta. It actually does quite well against Moth. Like, it tested really well against Moth, and then I played Master Clody actually during Swiss, who's a Moth only
fanatic
player. And I 2-0'd that match. Like, it does really well against Moth. It actually does quite well against Cyber Angels, even if you're not seeing as much. It actually has... It's less of like an advantage, but I'm gonna say I'm somewhere between like 55-45 or 60-40 to beat Burn. Like, I do feel like this deck actually has the edge against just like pure Burn.
Interesting.
The big problem, the big part of the meta that is the problem for this deck, basically all of the meta this deck has actually tested and in tournaments so far performed really, really well against, except for Spellproof Armor, which it basically just folds against.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair. I mean, Spellproof has generally good matchups against these kinds of decks, and that's why Spellproof is prevalent in this current format and not just some garbage deck.
Right, and that's the thing. So, like, basically, if you're going to play this, more or less accept that you're going to lose game one. Like, it's almost a given. The only way you're not losing game one is if all of their Jinzos and all of their Psychic Shockwaves are like the bottom cards of their deck. That's about it. Now, granted, you can still win if you've dealt, say, 2,000 to 3,000 damage before they've summoned Jinzo. And then even if your traps are locked, if you only need, say, one more attack to get through to win the game, then like maybe you can. But it's obviously a very specific and optimistic scenario. Most of the time, you're just going to lose game one to spell proof, and then the idea is like try to side a little bit for it. So I said like the couple Nidorias, and actually might even the side might have changed a bit too, even since then, to try to have some more Jinzo answers, because you really don't want to just instant lose to one card.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Makes sense.
See a fair amount of play, so that's really the biggest thing. So, but yeah, other than that, its matchup spread is actually like surprisingly good for a deck that when I first started putting it together and then we started testing, like looked like, oh, this is a funny meme, and then it's like, wait,
hold up,
this is actually destroying everything that isn't spellproof.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's awesome.
So yeah.
I mean, it's really cool to see something different, something actually new coming into the meta, because, you know, the meta didn't diversify as much as some of us would have liked.
Yeah, you can say that.
But, yeah, for anyone who's watching, this is a good deck. If you want to try it out, you want to play competitively, maybe you don't want to play Cyber Angels, but you still want something new and good, here you go. Raging Cat.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, thank you very, very much, Justice, for coming on the channel and doing this deck profile with me. And once again, congrats on top 8 in the most recent winner box.
Thank you.
And best of luck in this one.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, I have nothing else to add unless you have anything to say, anything to promote.
Yeah, just, you know, check out the Team JDG YouTube channel for all Speed Duel content, and also my Twitch, which is just JDG Justice. Every Sunday we are streaming the Speed Duel Masters Circuit, which for those who are not familiar is a league format, something that has never been done in Speed Duels before. So it's the same 10 players that are playing each week in a conquest format. So it's a best of 3 with 3 different decks rather than just your standard single deck, that will culminate in playoff stage. So a true league experience, so a different way to be able to follow Speed Duels and be able to do it every week rather than the like once a month win-a-box stuff. So it's every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so definitely check that out.
There you go. Both the Twitch channel and the YouTube channel will be linked down in the description of the video. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video, and make sure you stay tuned for another video next week on the channel. That's a wrap. Peace.